zone you're in, good afternoon, or still good morning as well. So my name is Byron Spurlock with Enabling. I work with the support team. So we see a vast majority of issues that we take in as far as calls from customers. One of the areas I wanted to showcase today for you was specifically from the support side on a lot of the administration and the from the on-premise and also from the cloud perspective. I'll be more than willing to answer questions definitely at the end. However, if there are some items that you see that are pertinent to what I'm discussing or what I'm showcasing throughout the presentation, I'd be more than happy to answer those, and I'll do my best not to digress too much. So what you may have noticed already is that my slide deck is very, very minimal. And with that in mind, being from a technical background, I wanted to keep it very demo focused. So you've probably seen this slide before about enabling technology summary regarding the three different areas: solutions, services, and support. Wanted to kind of cross a lot of these columns here regarding solutions such as SharePoint, Skype server, Skype Online, which we'll be talking about today, talking a little about 365, all the workloads, Exchange, email, voicemail, and then from the services perspective, how to provide unified voice and video and cloud communication, premise planning, design, security policy, and also from the support standpoint, which we'll be covering a lot about today, discussing and showing you, talking about health checks, talking about the different pillars of what Skype has. We'll look at some of the VoIP pieces as well, and we'll really dig into from the administration area of that. So this is my agenda. Very straightforward, very simple. I wanted to cover two different aspects: the administration, and also from the on-premise, and also from the cloud perspective. So I wanted to make sure I give you guys a presentation that was I wouldn't be going back and forth too much with the PowerPoint slides, but mainly be focusing on a lot of the demo. So I am going to get my screen ready, and I'm going to share out my desktop. Bear with me 1 minute here. Actually, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and share out my my presentation, or share out. Yeah, I will show my screen here. And let me know, Matt, once you're able to see this as well. So this is, my screen is slowly going to come up here.
It's slowly coming up. Just there's a blackout in front of some Skype window.
Okay, tell me when you see it.
We see it. We also see at least I see a big black chunk on the top center. So is there something?
Okay, let me get rid of that.
Browser? Yeah. No, it wasn't the bar. There's still, at least on my screen, there's something else there covering up front center.
Is it better or worse?
A little better. Yeah, you can see around it now.
So it's better?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so you do see the control panel that I'm looking at, right?
Yeah, we see users, topology, etc.
Okay, great. I always kind of feel like a eye doctor. It's better or worse? What about now? Is this better or worse? All right, so what we're looking at here is where you're going to do a lot of the day-to-day administration and also some of the configuration. The design comes pretty much like you hear about it on like the old pencil and paper kind of methodology, or today whiteboards and stuff like that. But what we're looking at here is going to be the majority of the administration. Now, the key word that I say there is majority. Why? Is because what we're looking at here is the actual GUI, right? So a lot of us are familiar with the MMC consoles, or the consoles like the admin consoles for different products, whether it be SQL, or it used to be Exchange, or it used to be Link. Now it's pretty much web-based, right? So built upon Silverlight. So everything's pretty much browser-driven. So the other portion, if you're not in the browser, yes, you can do this. Definitely do this through the PowerShell, or to be more specific, the Link Management Shell. The Link Management Shell is built on top of PowerShell. So Occasionally I'll get the question of, hey, I'm going to be using PowerShell. Can I do my administration? Do I have to be on a terminal or a console that has a link management shell? Technically, you don't. You can import the link management shell commandlets into PowerShell, but the whole encompassing story is built upon PowerShell. What we're going to be focusing on today, from a simplicity standpoint, is going to be the Skype admin console, which you're in. So I want to take you around this. The thing that, what you'll see first is the home menu. The home menu lets you know quite a few things. Now, the nice thing about the home menu is it lets you know very quickly whoever's driving what permission they have. So you can actually see all the permission that I have within this particular Skype environment. And another important action item on this that you can actually see is the monitoring reports. I get that question asked a lot of times, and monitoring relates to call quality, which relates to like QoS, which also relates to how well is my call performing. Now, I will say, Matt, do me a favor, Matt or Chris, just so I don't have to keep clicking on my Skype and then blocking you guys' view, just let me know if there's a question, and that way I'll kind of chime in if someone types it in.
You're good.
All right. So when we begin by talking about administration, right, one of the first thing that comes up is, how do I administer users? That's what most people are thinking about. There's, of course, the back-end infrastructure, but the front side, we think about users, IMing, presence, conferencing, voice, that perspective of it, right? So what we're going to do here is we're going to click on the user side of the control panel, and I'm going to, of course, let me click around here just a bit to free it up. We'll do it a different way. We're going to click on finding users, right? So what I just did right quick, I could easily search for a user, but I just did a find to find everyone, and I'm going to look and find my name, right? So I can actually find me, Byron Spurlock, and right here, I could find anything and everything about myself that the GUI can actually control, right? So what do we think about some of the most obvious things? My ID, which in a SIP perspective or a link or Skype perspective, we think about it as called a SIP URI. Why did I mention SIP URI? Well, because in email, we commonly know the name SMTP address, right? So email has SMTP address. In the UC space, we call it SIP URI. And so that's basically SIP, one word, and then URI. For those who are very, very, hey, let's get into technical, that SIP, stands for Session Initiation Protocol. The URI stands for Uniform Resource Indicator. Not that you would ever have to use that, or not that anyone would ever ask you, but now you know. So for short, SIP URI is my sign in, right? That's equivalent to my SMTP address. So that's going to be what Byron signs into his Skype environment. Typically, what you'll find is a lot of environments will have the SIP URI the same as their SMTP address. So when you think about from a pure administration standpoint, one, it's important to know where that's at. Two, it's important to know what that means and what it's used for. Three, from a design perspective, you can easily see how the administration can dictate your design, or your design can dictate your administration. And what do I mean by that? Is it's a common practice to have someone's SMTP address the same as their SIP URI. That's a common practice. But now we can understand what that actually means. Because let's say, for example, it wasn't the same. Let's say, for example, Byron's email address is, we'll just say byron.spurlock at enabling.corp. And my SIP address is something different. I could have issues. Like those issues I could be running into is the integration with my environment as far as Exchange, as far as a presence within Outlook, whether it be on-prem or in the cloud, or I could run into issues with Federation. Classic example of Federation that people don't have the SIP URI and the SMTP address the same is if you were to email me and you have Link or Skype in your environment, and let's say, for example, we're federated, I could easily right-click in the email and IM you. That's not the case when your SMTP and your SIP-URI are different. It gets a little bit more complicated and other things that have to be thrown into factor of how to mitigate that. But now we can actually see the nomenclature as far as the simplicity of your SMTP address and your SIP-URI should be the same. But now we also know where to look for it and why it's relevant. Here we can actually see where our pool is. So in a Skype environment, you can have your environment consists of a pool. So many people know what a pool is by front-end servers. So that front-end servers and your back-end servers exist this logical boundary of a pool. I normally equate the logical boundary of what a pool is to like a domain or a forest, right? In everyone's Active Directory environment, you can't touch a forest and you can't touch a domain, but you know it logically exists. That's the exact same thing we have here in Skype is a pool. A pool is where all the users exist. And here you can see my actual pool name. So I won't go through every single one of them, but I just wanted to point out a couple of items that are somewhat important to you. Another one, as we begin to talk about enterprise voice. Enterprise voice comes up a lot, all right? So before I start talking about what the line URI means and what that phone number means, and I chuckle because normally with delivering presentations, I don't really give out my phone number because then all of a sudden, I used to be bad about giving out my cell phone number as an example. Then all of a sudden I started getting all these calls from people in the audience. So I've gotten away from that, but now that I see that my line URI is there, I won't be surprised if I get a lot of calls directly because they see my phone number there. Well, that's actually my live working phone number. But for enterprise voice, what we have here is I consider is the third pillar of Skype or a link, whatever you're deploying, right? Those other three pillars are the first one being I'm in presence, the second one being conferencing, the third one being enterprise voice. Right around midway through Link 2013 and also Skype, a fourth pillar started creeping its way up, and that pillar was dictated based upon the sheer volume of need for that in people's environment, and that was application sharing. Pretty much exactly what we're doing now. So in a lot of environments, or depending on some technical articles that you read, there's four pillars, right? I'm in presence, conferencing, enterprise voice, and app sharing. The third one here, enterprise voice, this is where the line URI comes in, right? That's the all-encompassing, how do I have my DID? DID as far as direct inward dialing. Now we're talking about more of a telephony term and a focus here. So in the environment we have here, we live and breathe through Skype, right? So inbound calls, outbound calls all reside in Skype. There's no PBXs in the infrastructure to receive inbound calls or to make outbound calls. Our DIDs residing on Link. And I was actually chatting with a customer earlier this morning before this meeting or before this call, and we talked about that, the importance of enterprise voice and talking about it from the user's perspective, and we talked about administration-wise. So I was literally exactly in here sharing the exact same information I'm sharing with you with our actual customers as well. And within the telephony portion, if you notice, very, very subtle here, you have the telephony portion, all right? If I click down, you have other options as well. There's RCC. RCC was which stands for Remote Call Control, which started out in LCS 2005, and that was the ability to have your handset or control your handset through your soft client. That feature has actually been pretty much deprecated with Skype 2015. Link 2013, you had to have it could work with Link 2013, but there's a lot of caveats. With Skype, that feature has been pretty much deprecated. So there's remote call control, enterprise voice. There's audio video disabled, PC to PC calling. So I'm not going to change anything here. I'm just going to leave mine at enterprise voice, but I just wanted you to see that there's different options there. But also, subtly, underneath the telephony option, there's three other options or categories that are specific for voice, right? The line URI, which means this is what my telephone number is, my dial plan, and also my voice policy. Those two areas are important regarding a dial plan or regarding the administration. To the voice policy, pretty much gives me the permissions, and I'm going to move around here just a little bit. and I really want to bring home what the importance of the voice policy is. Matt, just as a quick status check, you can still see my screen and me clicking around, correct?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So, to divert just a little bit, because gets into a key area among administration. When you start talking about IMA presence, I like to consider that information just works out of the box. Conferencing should just work out of the box. And I'm not talking about dial-in conferencing. This is just, we joined a meeting today and we're presenting and we're collaborating. We have audio, we have media flowing. That's out of the box. When it gets to enterprise voice, this requires some specifics as far as other features, right? Other features as far as other equipment, mediation servers, connection or SIP trunk to my PSTN carrier, etc. So, but in addition to that, sooner or later what's going to come up is features, all right? Features, and these are more from a telephony perspective: call forwarding, delegation, transferring, call parking, PSTN rerouting. I remember I mentioned earlier as far as call and mission control, QoS, right? QoS, quality of service. Microsoft has its own version called CAC, right? CAC, call and mission control. And that's what this parameter here is as far as enable bandwidth policy override. So these are where you would set the options. And I'd probably click to it very quickly. But the way I found this was under voice routing. In my control panel, go into voice routing and go into voice policy. Every user has to have a voice policy, right? I equate that to whenever I'm giving knowledge transfer to the customers is consider it a social security number. Everyone has to have one, right? In order to do anything, to vote, order to maybe get a driver license, in order to apply for a loan or something, you have to have a social security number, right? Same thing in Skype. In order to make a call, yes, you need to know where you're going to call, but you have to be governed a policy in order to do that. And that's where the VoIP policy comes in. The VoIP policy has these calling features: forwarding, delegation, transferring, call parking, and etc. Where we start to get a little deeper into the crux is what this is and what else is needed. The voice policy is the key. The voice policy, consider it like, for those who know Active Directory, consider it like an OU, an OU. And inside the OU, it has many different policies and securities and users and other OUs can sit, right? So it's basically just a shell. That's exactly what the voice policy is. It's just an empty shell until you tell it what to do. And that's where you see all these check marks, right? I do want people in this policy to enable call forwarding. I do want people in this policy to be able to make transfers, and so on and so on. Aside from what you want them to be able to do, the voice policy also needs to know how to make calls. And that's where it gets interesting. And just kind of level set. What we're in is the actual dial plan. A lot of people may confuse with dial plan of where is the one area I need to change my dial plan. And I kind of say it's all encompassing. It's in the routes, it's in the PSTN usage. The key area is voice routing. And once I go into voice routing, I go into voice policy, I can begin to look at usages, right? Usages, for those who are telephony, is what we used to be called class of service. A class of service was, do I want this person to dial local? Do I want them to dial international? Do I want them to dial long distance? And that's what was deemed in a telephony term. When I look at our environment a little bit more, when I click into the usages, what is indicative of a usage, or what's needed for in a usage, is a route, right? The route is what tells my next hop. So I can click deeper and deeper into this, and ultimately what some of you may be looking for is, you may have already been saying, okay, how is a voice policy going to show me how do I make a call? Well, we did it just by a few clicks, right? If I click out of this, we went from being our voice policy to within the voice policy is a usage, which is basically a class of service, right? And then also we saw that the class of service relates to a route. When I click on my route, if I scroll to the bottom, you'll see the trunk, All right, that trunk is basically a uniform telephony term. Trunk is how do I make a call going outbound to a PSTN, regardless of what type of VoIP infrastructure I have, regardless if I'm using PBXs, Cisco, Nortel, Mitel, it doesn't matter. We all say that same terminology, trunk. And so you can see here, this is where my trunk is set up, which basically says this is how, for people in that policy, are going to make an outbound call. So I know we got a little granular pretty quick, but I just wanted to show you from an administration perspective how we got there, and that was in the voice routing. What led to me going to voice routing was when I went to find all my users, and I went to my particular user account. When I was into telephony, I happened to look at voice policy, right? And I can see that I have several voice policies that are applicable, which means Byron can be a part of only one at a time, but Byron can be selected to different voice policies. Different voice policies could pertain to different things. Maybe I want one voice policy to not allow team calling. Maybe I want one voice policy to allow everything, but not to do delegation, et cetera, et cetera. And this is where I would do a lot of the administration. There's other areas as well, and I'm going to point out some that are probably the most pertinent, is conferencing. And you can see I have many different conferencing policies for no audio or no peer-to-peer sharing, or some test ones as well. And also mobility. All right, so let me scroll down here just a tad bit so you can see that. So it says automatic, which means the default global. You can always click on our view. You can always click where it says view to see what that policy has in it. See here it says global, and I have enabled for mobility, and then I have enabled for call via work. Call via work is a feature that gives me the ability to call from my cell phone basically, but it appear as my work number being presented to the caller, to the calling party. That's what that feature can provide for me. Now the key thing about this is where I have all these parameters is just knowing where to get to these. All right, because a lot of times end users or administrators will come up with the notion of how do I create a policy for mobility users to only do X? Or how do I create here's a very common one for conferencing, how do I create a policy for people to not do app sharing? In addition to that, what if I want to create a policy that only limits X amount of users in a meeting? That's probably one of the top ones I get all the time is, hey, I want to create a policy where people can only specify 20 people in a conference. How do I do that? Well, one, I tell them to open up the control panel, go to conferencing. They can either create a brand new policy by clicking on the new and creating a user policy, or they can click on an existing policy or the default global. Keep in mind, when you click on the global or whenever you edit the global, it affects the entire environment. So that means anyone who's not in a specific policy will inherit whatever you change here. So by default, the Microsoft best practice is to keep your default policy intact. You can't delete it, but you can make edits in this. So a lot of times the best practice is to make a backup of your conferencing policy, just in your default global conferencing policy, just in case you don't have any additional ones you create here and someone starts making changes in your default policy, and then you realize this is not what we want and you want to go back. If that's the case and you don't have a backup or at least noted down the configurations, you don't know what you had to begin with, right? So that could be a situation that you don't want to be in. But the key thing is I want to show you where the conferencing information is. Another area that I'll show you, and then I'll kind of pause for questions because I'll show you some other features as well, is remote access, right? So the remote access piece. or we refer to it as external access. In the external access, we have the same thing that we have for other areas as far as policies, etc. And I would say the question that comes up the most is federation. How do I set up federation? All right. So federation, from the administration perspective, is allowing two organizations to talk to each other. Those two organizations can be Skype to Skype, Skype to link to link, many different facets. The key thing is, with the federation, you can allow certain configurations, or you can allow, let me go back to policies. You can enable for many different things, right? I can enable for everyone in my organization to have federation or not. I can create brand new policies. I can specify for other organizations, if I click on here, to be able to federate with. All right. This is all, a lot of it's out of the box. And if I click on new, I'm not going to create one here. I'm going to say allow domain. What's pretty straightforward on the GUI side is me specifying the name of the organization. All right. So a lot of people may know Microsoft leverages the name, Contoso and Fabricam.com quite a bit, right? So I could type in Fabricam.com as the domain name. In the edge, everyone's going to have an edge server if you have Skype or Link, and that edge server is going to have an FQDN. The typical thing that people see is sip.yourdomainname.com. So I'd put in the access edge, I could put in sip.fabricam.com. I could put in a comment that this is a test federation. And once I click on commit, that federation partner would be just like everyone else. So I will give you a little tidbit, all right? So a lot of times people may ask, well, what is the difference between you creating a federated partner that has a edge server name and a non-edge server name, right? When you have a federation relationship with someone that does not have an edge server name, what you're basically saying is, I will allow communication to you. That's basically what it says. By me specifying your edge name means I am specifically allowing a federation with you, which basically means I trust you more. This is probably a little bit funny to say. I trust you more than the other people. That's really what it means. And to get a little bit specific technically, what it does is by specifying an FQDN here for the edge server, really basically allows X amount of connections per second. So this is where it gets a little bit granular, is that without specifying the edge FQDN in your own environments, you are basically saying, if you're customer A and you want to federate with customer B, out of the box, Link or Skype will say, I will accept 1,000 SIP URI connections concurrently, and that's the max. That's per second, all right? That's a lot of SIP connections per second. And then when you start drilling down as to what defines a SIP connection, well, a SIP connection is when I have my Link presence open or my Skype client open, and I'm going to, let's see if I can do this here. I'm going to share out. Matt, you guys can still see the screen, right? Did it black out anything?
No, I can still see it.
Okay. What I want to do is I'm going to deviate just for a second, and I'm going to share my desktop.
It does look like it's blacked out a little bit at this point.
Okay, is it back?
That's back, yeah.
Okay, so what I'm going to show you here is my Link client, or Skype client. I keep saying Link. So hopefully you guys should see this. So if you don't see the demo, that's fine just for the moment. Do you see my my Skype client in front here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So what I wanted to show you real quick is just to kind of give you some tidbits of information regarding that federation. that federation, as you can see, I have many different people that I'm federating with from different customers. So I figured a picture's worth 1,000 words. So let's say, for example, for a particular customer, I have specified the FQDN of that edge server, right? What it basically means, I was talking about SIP connections. This, what you see here for customers, is a SIP connection. A SIP connection from a Skype perspective means, can one endpoint see another endpoint? But underneath that layer of a statement, in order for my presence to be seen to them and for me to see their presence, really means my edge servers are talking to their edge servers on a persistent manner. It's a very persistent, constant dialogue that's happening of exchanging information. So the actual update interval is like every 15 to 20 seconds. So for every 15 to 20 seconds, you can see here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? 7 different federated people I'm communicating with. That means my edge servers for enabling are communicating to their edge servers on a constant basis, right? So let's say, for example, I'm going to risk this by changing my presence. If I change my presence from presenting to busy, right then and there, I am sending from my environment to their environment my present status, which means that's a SIP connection, right? So now imagine Byron has with an organization, let's just say for an organization, I am sharing communication with one person, right? But what if I'm sharing presence with 20 people? That's just for Byron, right? So imagine Byron is sharing presence for 20 different people in your organization, all right? So right now, at that point in time, when we go back to my federated scenario, then I am accepting 20 different connections just for Byron, right? So let's magnify that to a greater fold. What if in my organization enabling, I have 10 people who are sharing their presence with 50 different contacts each from your organization, right? So we can kind of do the math very quickly. And by doing that, now we see very quickly that, that's 500 connections, right? That's 500 connections. Only if 10 people have 50 contacts just for your organization. So then we magnify that even more. So you can imagine in environments that have, 1,000 people. And what happens if those 1,000 people have 50 contacts each for another person's organization, right? We've just exceeded 5,000 current connections. So in that scenario, what I would know, what I would bring up is, hey, let's specify based upon how many users you have in your organization, based upon how many people are going to be federating, and based upon how many contacts, more or less, each of your members are going to have of another organization, I might come back and say, we need to put in the FQDN of that edge server for that organization to be more specific than a allowed federation. Why? Because I know about the 1,000 connection limit. So, long story short, what happens if you don't have that? What happens if you exceed the number of connections and you didn't specify the FQDN, right? I'm going to go back to my presentation here. Hopefully you can see my control panel. Well, what would happen is users in your organization would say, why do I see of my federated contacts, why do I see some people's presence but not others? That is the end state of what they would see. But I've kind of explained technically where it is, how it works, and kind of the rationale of why you ever have the edge server FQDN. So you guys, Matt, you can still see my control panel, right?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so that was a very long, detailed explanation that you're not going to find a lot of KB articles going into that much detail about why you should have the FQDN. But so now you can kind of see a lot of times when customers ask me, hey, should I put an FQDN here or not? I just say yes. So I don't go into the long 20-minute explanation of why, because even if I do, they ask me at the same question at the end. They're like, just yes or no. So, but that's kind of giving you ins and outs about federation. So before I move on to the cloud administration, I want just to pause here since we have approximately, about 24 minutes left. I want to spend some time on the cloud administration to see if there's any questions here before I leave this area.
Looks like all's quiet.
All right. So normally from doing presentations, quiet means either three things. It means either, dude, you're very good at explaining, I don't have any of the questions for you. Or two, it means I have no idea what you just talked about. Or three, it means I'm asleep. So. All right, so let me, I'm going to go ahead and see. I see someone was. Oh, we know why the call was coming in, because I'm not on disturb. Let me change it back to do not disturb. That's why someone called me and they saw that I was available. All right, so let me present out my desktop again. Actually, let me try to do it a different way. I'm going to present out just that program. Bear with me 1 second. Let me find it here. Perfect. All right. So the next thing I want to take a look at is I'm not on the actual server doing the administration anymore. I wanted to show you the cloud offering. So the cloud, right? The cloud is I call the newest buzzword that floats around. So the cloud, we hear a lot of times can be, it's thrown around just like UC, and it's thrown around just like collaboration. You hear that a lot, and it's very common to hear those three things in a conversation with, hey, yes, let's collaborate in the cloud with some UC. And the funny thing, just kind of provides some humor, is if I hear that sometime, I'll kind of stop someone and say, do you know what you even just said? So what I mean by that is cloud, the 365 space has its own offering as well. And I literally just had this conversation with someone, is that you could be hybrid, and the way that hybrid can be very complex nowadays, right? We think about it as a cloud, and we think about either all or nothing. Everything in the cloud or nothing in the cloud, right? And that's not really the case. And what you see here, because we at Enabling can easily say we're hybrid, right? What do we mean by that? Well, we actually just saw the link or Skype infrastructure being on-prem, but Exchange in the cloud. That's a hybrid UC space. You can easily be vice versa. You could have Exchange on-prem and Skype in the cloud. That's the same thing as being hybrid as well. You can caveat beyond those two pillars, and you can actually have Exchange on-prem and also Exchange in the cloud, and link in the cloud or on-prem, or you can have it vice versa. You can have Exchange on-prem, and you can also have link on-prem and in the cloud as well. So there's many different facets. So typically when someone says we want to go hybrid, that's where I'm going to begin having a discussion with them as far as, okay, are we talking about Exchange and or link being in the cloud and or on-prem? And that's where we kind of go from there, because you can have many different facets of that. So from the administration perspective, this is the admin center. The nice thing about this is a portal, right? And this portal is, just as long as you have browser access, you put in your credentials, you can get into the admin center. And in the admin center, I can see anything and everything for my organization. So here, for example, you can easily see from clicks of a button, I can see all my active users. You can see that I'm going to find my name again, Byron Spurlock, and I can find more information about myself. As far as my login credentials, my phone information, my information is replicated. How is it replicated? So now we get into ADFS, right? Active Directory Federation Services is the way that is even rippling across the internet, because what we want is single sign-in, right? SSO. So we don't want to have separate authentication on-prem, separate authentication in the cloud. That's not very encompassing for our users. We just made life a lot more difficult for them. So what we want is to have a pure, synonymous, simplistic kind of ubiquitous type manner in which people are going to be signed in. But here, the important thing is we see all of our active users, right? We see all our active users we have for our environments, and it was pretty straightforward, just like we saw in our control panel. Browser-based, everything on the left, as far as administration-wise, as far as columns, and the effect is on the actual right. Here, and we can actually see the health of different areas. Another common area that comes up quite a bit is, right, and I was just on a call one night about this exact same scenario where the customer had issues with Exchange, or what appeared to be Exchange calling numbers, right? And one of the first things I asked about was, hey, is there any Exchange? Let's take a look at your hybrid. Oh, what kind of infrastructure do you have? Is it on-prem? Is it hybrid? And there was a lot of confusion around that, right? And so one of the key things is just knowing what infrastructure you have in place today and knowing how to get to it, because that's going to be very important as well. So when I talk about knowing how to get to it, knowing having access to your admin center, because what if very quickly I want to determine if there's an outage? You can see how I did that, right? Very quickly, I was able to go to my portal, go to my service health, go to my Exchange Online. I clicked on more, and I could actually pretty much see what's going on, right? If there's any outages or work's being done, I can see the history of information, etc. That's a very 2 clicks away from me finding things out. And the end result could have been maybe my FreeBusy isn't updating, right? Or my calendar's not updating, or anything like that related to Exchange. Specifically, you can see that since we're set up for the hybrid where we have Link on-prem and Exchange in the cloud. But the key thing is, hey, I see that there's a last refresh. There was some activity done on today at 1:42, right? Well, it depends on what time zone you're in, right? So that's Central Standard Time. So just knowing that I have that accessibility for me. If I go back to my main portal, for adding users, delete users, adding users is pretty straightforward, right? We have a lot of our billing information. And also, when we start talking about directory sync, right? So one of the questions that comes up a lot is, how often is my information synced? And that question normally follows the next question of, hey, I created a new user account in my Active Directory, but they're not able to get into Exchange yet or sign into Outlook yet. The next question that follows that symptom is, when was my last sync? And you can see very quickly without me doing anything, I was able to go to my portal, the home page, and I can actually see information. You can see, get more granular. My last password synced was actually 2 minutes ago. Last directory sync was 2 hours ago. Of course, Azure is what is Microsoft's Active Directory namespace, or their cloud directory. That's what they call it. So when you start hearing buzzwords as far as ADFS used to sync your on-prem to Microsoft Azure Active Directory, that's what we're talking about here. Then we also see additional information as far as how many domains I'm actually working with, how many are going to be syncing. Well, the most important thing here, passwords and directory. That's what you're going to run into probably the most as far as specifically when you set things up is, hey, user just changed their password. How often does it get synced? You can see here it's synced 2 minutes ago, and the same thing with my directory as well. If I go back here, a couple spots, the next logical thing that comes up is adding domains, right? Adding domains is pretty straightforward. I could put in here Cotoso.com and go through the next scenario. This is pretty straightforward as well. And another thing I want to show you here is checking the actual health, right? Checking the actual health of a certain domain, if there's any issues. So the nice thing about this being on the portal is I see trends as far as the usage for people who are using whatever workload that you have in the cloud, whether it be Skype, whether it be OneDrive, whether Exchange, adding users, modifying users, checking the server health, billing, software licensing is all pretty much straightforward right here. Easy to get into support, and also a lot of my server settings. So if I want to see all my partner relationships, my domains, it's all right here from clicks of a button. And the nice thing about this, it's not nested, right? Nested as in have to click layer after layer after layer after layer. None of that is actually occurring. And a couple of things I want to show you here. My Exchange. Let's see if it goes here. So I'm getting a little bit more granular in depth here. So when we start talking about in the admin portal, having Exchange online, pretty much the common theme there is voicemail, right? So whenever I talk about Exchange online, the assumption is, and there's no exception to the rule here, is that I have my mailbox in the cloud. If my mailbox is in the cloud, that means my voicemail is in the cloud. That actually works with having Link on-prem. Perfectly supported solution. What's not supported solution is to have, I'm going to be very particular about what I'm about to give you here, is having Link on-prem, Exchange on mailbox in the cloud, but my voicemail on-prem. Not doable, right? Not supported. So the easiest way to understand that is specifically for enterprise voice, because with enterprise voice, unified messaging is the only supported voicemail platform. So if I'm going to be deploying enterprise voice, what's going to be important is me having Exchange, mailbox in the cloud, and also wherever my mailbox is, my voicemail must exist as well. So that means if my mailbox is on-prem, my voicemail is on-prem as well. In this case, my mailbox is in the cloud, and my voicemail is in the cloud as well. And you can see I went to my Exchange Admin Center. I can go to Unified Messaging, and this is where I receive populated with all the information. Here, of course, it's going to take a little bit of seconds since I'm doing a live demo. You can see my dial plans there, my gateways there, my SBC gateways. But the important thing is I can see that my recipients as far as mail. I'll go back to Byron, and you can see here showing you Byron's information. I'm actually showing my mail usage and everything like that. So all my mailbox features with clicks of a button. And this is literally working with Byron's, myself's Exchange online live mailbox. So I'm going to back out of this very, very slowly. So I want to make sure I still receive mail and I don't click on the actual wrong thing. So I'm going to back out of this and go back to, where is my, actually do it this way. Sorry, go to my admin portal. So I talked about quite a bit, and that's why I kept the slides to a minimum. I wanted to show my 2 bullet points being the slides, showing you some administration scenarios on-prem, and also to spend a little time about administration scenarios in the cloud. So what I want to definitely do, since I know you're soaking up all this information, is I want to leave a few minutes here towards the end to answer any questions that you might have regarding on-prem or in the cloud or anything I've shown you through the demo today. Again, we're quiet. So, Chris or Matt, I am going to turn it over to you guys to see if there's any questions from the audience for me. I'd be more than happy to answer anything.
It looked good, Byron. This is Chris. The one thing that Microsoft did of late was they kind of doubled down on cloud-based statistics and usage when they acquired some of the intellectual property of Event Zero. Are you seeing that yet in the cloud admin portal, where you can start to dig in a little deeper into usage trends, etc.?
Not as granular as those, I call it rich client apps. So I haven't seen that as much. So that's you're absolutely correct. That's where I personally think that from an industry or from a capability spec, we've gone backwards a little bit from the cloud versus what the on-premise piece has. But to Microsoft's defense, this is what they follow they follow that same pattern throughout a lot of their acquisitions. They'll the main thing was just acquiring it and then incorporating all that knowledge and information into their space, and then it becomes advanced. So initially, right now, we're not seeing the benefits of that acquisition. So I have seen a lot of people specifically still leverage like you said, Event Zero, which I'm quite familiar with, using on-prem as much and rely on it on-prem because the cloud doesn't give you that great apples-to-apples comparison. But eventually, in time, it will be just as good, if not better, soon.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right, great. Well, it looks like Matt is preparing to wrap it up. And for those of you that have been on all day, thank you. It's been a marathon. Hopefully you gained at least 3 or 4 pieces of information that you didn't before, and it's made your worthwhile. Those of you that just listened to Byron, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you, Byron. That was terrific overview and info, as usual.
All right, thank you, Chris.
Yes, thank you so much to everybody who's attended as well. If you would take 2 minutes, we have a survey that I've just popped into the conversation window, a link to a short survey, 8 questions, nothing too in-depth. If you wouldn't mind filling that out, that would be really helpful to us, just to make sure that we are doing everything we can to improve events from here on in. And also, if there are things that you are looking to, move into, questions that you may have, or topics that you are looking to explore, then I'd be more than happy to field any of those questions or put you in touch with the right people as well. And just a little note on the survey too, all completed entries will be entered into a draw for a $25 Visa gift card. Again, by way of thank you so much for attending and also taking the time to fill out the survey as well. So I'm going to leave the conversation window open if there are any last minute questions, but at this point I'm going to stop recording and want to thank you again for coming.